The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Well, welcome to the show, Living United in Interesting Times. This is the show where we talk about the interesting times in which we live, and aren't they interesting? You know, over the past year and a half, we've experienced a global, worldwide pandemic. We've experienced, a major economic recession. We've bounced back. We have vaccinations happening worldwide. We have masks. We have all sorts of interesting things that we never thought that we'd ever really have to think about or talk about, or certainly never things that crossed my mind. So today we're going to be talking with the brand new CEO and president of the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce, my good friend Wendy Hunt, who we have in the studio. Wendy, you've been with the Chamber for
about 10, 11 weeks.
Oh, so you like about 5 or 8 minutes.
Right.
And but we've known each other, of course, for quite a while from your previous experiences with the Sohegan Valley and Merrimack Chamber of Commerce.
That's right.
And then prior to that with the Milford Improvement Team.
That's right. I've been around a while in the nonprofit world.
You have been, absolutely. And boy, if there is one organization that hasn't had an interesting ride over the last year and a half, it's got to be a Chamber of Commerce. So
definitely. When COVID hit, we're just like any other business. We were not an essential business initially. Chambers are really known for face-to-face interactions and connectors of people. So we really had to change that immediately, like everyone else. That word pivot that we're all tired of hearing.
Yeah. Well, I think about chambers, and I think it's one of the things we should talk about with folks is that, like, there's different types. Chambers come in all sorts of different flavors.
Right.
And I know that, for example, in a region like Greater Nashua, whether it be in the Milford, Sohegan Valley area or in Merrimack or in Nashua, this is not a super heavy tourism region. In a lot of places, you go out to, say, the seacoast, the Chamber of Commerce might play more of a role as sort of the welcoming center for tourists in the community.
They definitely are.
Not really the case here, right? Here you're really doing what it takes to support businesses and the vibrancy of the economic sector, if you will.
Right. So it's funny when people ask me what a Chamber of Commerce does, I go, it's not what you think it is, where you stop in for the pretty travel brochures. It is about the economic driving of businesses in our region. I sit as the board chair of the New Hampshire Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. So we did a lot of partnering with other chambers just to be stronger and offer the resources throughout the pandemic. And as things were changing so rapidly, we'd blast out something from the SBA only to go 10 minutes later, they changed that.
So the SBA, I'm sorry.
The Small Business Administration.
This is Mike's one and only rule of
right.
television.
No acronyms.
Jargons and no terminology.
No
like
acronyms,
that.
right.
Yes. The Small Business Administration.
Right. So we really became communicators from the state and federal level down to the businesses. And most chambers, we communicated with all the businesses, not just our members.
Right.
We wanted, because you know what, if you're doing well, but your neighbor next door is not doing well as a business, you're not driving traffic to that business.
Yeah,
you want we want a whole street to do well. And also it was goodwill, but it was also, if we show goodwill, then maybe you'll join our chamber after this is all over. And we have seen a lot of positive results from our work. So not only did we do, send out information from the federal government and the state government, we also did a lot of business webinars. We would get the experts to talk about PPP loans, to talk about, pivoting, to talk about marketing, to talk about best ways to Zoom with a customer. We pretty much ran the entire gambit of that.
So basically, the Chamber of Commerce, and I know this from my perspective, being a chamber member,
right,
and also trying to connect also other business people that I know of to resources, I would always connect them back to the chamber. There were things that we've invented a whole new way of doing things.
Right.
Like you mentioned the PPP loans. Well, the PPP loan was, basically a grant that was given to businesses and nonprofits to keep their employees on the payroll so that we wouldn't end up with a mass depression of, 30, 40, 50% unemployment, basically to keep our economy afloat. Well, the logistics and the details of how do you get to those resources and what can you use them for and how do you apply and who are the lenders and all of that was information that wasn't really readily available.
No.
The government did an unbelievable job of making resources available, but who knew how to get at it?
Right.
And that's where the chamber played a
That's
role.
where we came in. The governor and the Department of Business and Economic Affairs reached out to us right away. And we became the conduit of information. We would hear it from the state. We were also doing a lot of advocating with our congressional delegation and our U.S. senators. We had a lot of one-on-one meetings with them to try to say, look, this is who's hurting. They wanted our feedback a lot.
Right.
Also, I think it's important to note that Chambers initially, as a 501c6 organization, or really any 501c6 organization, did not qualify for any of that disaster loan. No PPP, none of it. So it was through
other businesses,
right, and 501c3. So as we were struggling because we're not having, we're not getting revenues from events. People aren't joining the chamber because they're suffering with,
Right.
their business closures. So we were really on autopilot and really, I wouldn't say we struggled, but we really persevered and we worked a lot of long hours.
I can imagine, and I know that from my personal experience of working with you and being involved also, with different chambers that. The revenue model of a chamber is primarily based on income from events,
Right.
the sponsorship of those events,
That's right.
general sponsors, and members. And if your members are businesses that are struggling or losing revenue or their customer or they're shut down,
that was the ones, if you were an essential business or you were able to pivot and let's say you're a manufacturer and you could pivot immediately to do something else, you were in great shape. But we definitely we shut down too and worked remotely. But who ever heard of Zoom before? I'd maybe been on it one other time, and now it's just become this way of life.
It's ubiquitous.
Right.
So, and I just want to say on behalf of the community that we live in, thank you to you personally because
you're very nice.
I saw the energy that you brought to the table. I saw the energy that your chamber brought at the time. The chamber out in the Milford area, but now also the Nashua area, and I think it's made all the difference for a lot of organizations. What do you see now? So we're in this really interesting transition time.
Right.
I feel like we're still in the pandemic, but we're not. You and I probably 3 weeks ago would be sitting here maybe wearing a face mask, maybe having just taken it off, explaining to the audience why. I know you and I are both vaccinated, and we've had, we've been in meetings together, but we don't.
And we did a webinar on vaccinations.
And we did. That's
the
true too.
information. It was for people hesitant to get vaccines.
Yeah.
We got all the medical information.
So we're kind of in this. I don't want to say we're in purgatory, but we're kind of like in this. We were there,
right,
and we're not quite there. Where we are is a really interesting place, right? We're coming out of our shell. And how do you see that playing out in the business community? What are you seeing right now as far as how that's gonna work?
Well, right now, the governor has, we don't have the mask mandate, and the city, the mayor also said it's not, required, but businesses can require it.
Right,
so they've come up with some signage. If they're not comfortable and they want you to have a mask, I've got a couple calls of people upset that a business would ask that, and I'm like, it's a private business, then shop someplace else, I guess, is my response to that. Because a business owner has a right to say, I want you to wear a mask, I'm not comfortable. We had our first in-person event last week, and Mike was honored. United Way was honored as the Community Hero of the Year for all they did. For all they did, I couldn't leave without saying that. For all they did, above and beyond during COVID for businesses and residents and
pay you for your
everybody.
Presence here
He's going to hand me cash later.
Yeah, sure.
And people were so happy to be there. And that's the social and the fun side of it. The networking is back and the events are back. But what I'm seeing on the economic side is many of our members and businesses in general cannot find workforce.
So it's getting employees. And you hear that kind of everywhere is And I know that that's a big deal, especially in the retail.
It was a big deal before the pandemic. Now it's really a big deal.
It was. So the retail sector has been hammered.
Restaurants.
The restaurant sector has been hammered. I know that that's on the news every single night, every single day. You listen to NPR, and you're going to hear somebody talking about that. So, and I'm seeing that personally as a customer, as a patron. Right. You go somewhere, and you're wondering, like, well, how come there's only one server where you used to be like there were 3 or 4 servers? Why does it take so long? Maybe we need to be a little patient with that stuff.
We definitely do. I mean, the business owners, especially the restaurant owners, they're bussing tables, they're seating people. I know one of the upcoming events we have, we typically would have, if we had a luncheon or a dinner or what have you, we would be offered to have a served meal or have buffet. And because the hotels and other event centers are having problems getting employees, it's now just a buffet only option.
Right.
I know the state is very cognizant of this. The city's very cognizant of this, and we're all putting our heads together. But the fact is, we've got a shortage of workforce housing, of affordable housing, and so we're trying to recruit all sorts of people. We did.
Well, I mean, if we're really honest about this, I don't necessarily want to get into the politics and the economics of this, but. The truth is we're talking about a lot of the lower wage jobs.
We are in travel and tourism, hospitality.
So I was just listening to NPR this morning. There was a story on National Public Radio. It was an interview with a woman who had spent most of her career working in the restaurant industry. She had worked as a server, and when the shutdown came, she had to leave her job, and so she was at home with her kids, like so many people, and she also took to volunteering. She volunteered with the fire department in her local community, and she loved it so much that along the way, during the 6, 8, 9 months of the pandemic shutdown where she went back and she got certified, I believe, as an EMT, and is now working full-time for the fire department. And she said, I'm never going back.
Right.
This is what I want to do now.
Different careers after getting laid off for that extensive amount of time is part of the problem.
Yeah.
The other.
So that's not coming back.
No. And the other workforce shortage problem right now in the hospitality, lodging, and especially in our areas that are, have seasonal, like the beaches and the mountains. There are no J-1 visas to bring in the, foreign students to come work at all the hotels. Right. So, we've tried really hard to lobby Washington and the president and try to do something about getting those students in. Right. It's interesting. We had a meeting as chambers the other day to talk about that. And one of the projects we did with the state, we were also ineligible for like the Main Street funds or any of the funds, the Gopher funds coming out of the state. But what we did do is we could contract with the state, and we did it by region. So the 7 chambers in this region, Concord South, all the way out to Sauhegan Valley, and over to Hudson and Londonderry, and Salem, we did a workforce recruitment project where we tried to attract workers from the big cities. And we had some success of getting people. We did a video series, a job fair. The video series was, it was great, drone shots of, what you can do in New Hampshire. I think in New Hampshire, we're very lucky. We have all the resources of the natural resources, all the outdoor activities. We also have a lot of culture in our cities. If you want to go see a play or a band or music, and we're an hour from anywhere. We're an hour from the ocean. We're an hour from Boston, we're an hour from Vermont. 4 hours from Canada.
I don't think there's any argument about that. And I think that maybe at the higher end, I don't know, the higher end of the wage scale, when we're talking about engineers and scientists and perhaps people who are entrepreneurs, that's probably not going to be the issue, right? It's going to be more the lower. I mean, I'm guessing that our bigger employers like the BAEs of the world are probably not going to have the same kind of. Maybe they will.
They're not competing
extent.
with our restaurants and hospitality jobs and retail. Something that was very interesting, you were at our annual awards last week, obviously, was we did a panel on diversity and inclusion. And one of our panelists was Will Arvello, who
from the state, right?
Right. He's from the, he's the head of the economic development under the business and businesses, BEA. Sorry, it's late in the day.
Business and industry affairs. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Don't know my own acronyms sometimes.
It is the end of the day.
Right,
so
it's the end of the
I'll give you a
day,
pass
and my
on
office has no air conditioning in downtown Nashua. It was horrible. So excuse me.
Well, and I don't know what day
Right.
people are going to be watching this, but we should
Right.
just, for the record,
It's
say
almost 100.
It is, absolutely.
So-
And we're from New England. We're not used to that. Well,
I'm
you're from Florida.
I'm a
You
native
should be used
Floridian,
to
but I've
that.
been here 18 years. I don't like the heat anymore. So anyhow, it was very interesting that Will Arvelo was talking about how can we fill all these positions. And
Right.
we really talked about diversity and inclusion. And that is our future as a state, to have immigrants. Let's say we have we have a very diverse population. 25% of our population in the greater Nashua area is diverse. That's the good news for us. We're already ahead. According to Will, we're already ahead of most cities and regions in the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because with our diverse population, they tell their friends and relatives and any of their contacts,
Right.
this is a great place to live, tons of jobs, and that's how we're going to improve our workforce.
Yeah, and I also say it also makes us, I think, an interesting place.
I do too. I absolutely. And studies have shown that communities that embrace their diversity are the communities that grow. Right. The other ones are just stagnant or just start to flounder. So as part of the chamber, I'm really excited about trying to bring more diversity to our chamber to better reflect the makeup of our community.
So that's a really kind of an interesting point you're making. So when I talk about like where we are and where we're going, we're in this interesting phase of trying to come out of the pandemic economy, moving into the post-pandemic economy, and that includes the attraction and development of a stable workforce and a growing workforce, and it's going to take a different approach perhaps than we've had in the past.
That's the way our businesses are going to grow and thrive in our community.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. What other challenges do you maybe see these days, or on the horizon, as we try to grow our economy back?
Well, as a chamber, it's funny, when I first got into the chamber world about 6 years ago, after running a different nonprofit, I thought, it's all about connecting people, and which a lot of it is, and about information and resources.
Yeah.
But another big part of it is advocacy. And we're up at the State House advocating pro-business. Yeah. So we want to make sure, if we're going to grow our economy and grow the state, that our legislature are passing laws that are pro-business and not going to cripple them, in other words, and make us less competitive for other businesses. So I think our state government does a good job with that, and the governor does a good job with that. But those are issues that we face every year. And especially coming out of COVID, there was some legislation that would have really, we think, harmed the recovery. And I think we were pretty successful in standing up for the business community. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I have to say about the Nashua Chamber's advocacy work is that when we say pro-business, sometimes that has a negative connotation that feels a little bit like us and them kind of but the Nashua Chamber is like a pro-business, pro-people approach. Correct. And it's always been that, which has been really, really good. And I mean, for me, one example of that is that years ago when Medicaid was expanded in the state, that the Nashua Chamber played a pivotal role in helping to support that because it helped from a workforce perspective.
Correct,
When we talk about housing, the approach that we take as a chamber, and I'm part of that as well, of course, is to look at it like, we need to have housing that people can afford. If people can't afford the houses that they live in based on the wages that we pay them, then you can't have a workforce.
Not expect them
no
to stay
workforce
around.
equals no economy, unless we're not all going to be replaced by robots at some point in the near future. I mean, maybe when you and I retire. I don't know.
Let's hope not that soon.
I know, absolutely. Our kids.
But that's true.
Work,
when you say, it does sound that way. What we want to make sure is that,
But it isn't that way.
We want to remain. We want when we say we're pro-business, we want our state to remain competitive with other states. You don't want to have heavy taxes and heavy.
Well, right, of course. I mean, being pro, you can substitute pro-community with pro-business, and I can say, it's not good for any community when all of the industry leaves and all the people who are left behind have no job. Right. That's not a socially oriented kind of a perspective.
Right, and again,
either.
We want. When you have, to me, cities that have a chamber or towns that have a chamber are lucky. because our whole mission is to have successful business. Successful business means you have a successful, healthy community. Healthy community means people want to live here and they have the resources to live here with all the extras. So that's why I feel strongly about the mission of the Chamber in supporting businesses and helping them grow, because it's for the whole community as well.
So you said that one of the things you said, which really interested me, was you've gotten some calls from businesses who said that they have some customers that are upset because they've asked some people to wear masks, and I'm sure that the opposite exists as well. I mean, I know that I like to wear a mask when I go into a business, and I feel sometimes uncomfortable if the business doesn't. So there's probably all of that. But I think businesses really have to kind of navigate these really murky waters.
They do.
And it's not easy.
They do. Well, as a chamber, we get all sorts of calls, Mike. I mean,
I'm sure you do.
I get calls like, somebody's in my parking spot. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with that. It's crazy. I'm sure you get the crazy.
I get the same.
Yeah,
I get
they're
calls
not crazy, but
I get calls from people who say, what can the United Way do about stopping the smoking at the public library?
Outside.
Outside at the public library. I'm like, well, probably not as much as you might think.
Right. I'm flattered you think we have this much power, right?
I know, right? Well, where's my magic wand? I must have left it over at the Harry Potter exhibition.
Right, exactly.
So, but yeah, but the murky waters and how businesses, how is the Chamber helping, or can the Chamber help organizations, businesses to figure out how to be effective when trying to navigate those kinds of situations?
Right. Well, I think, first of all, business owner has a right. And I think the city did a good job. On Friday, the city sent out posters, which we distributed in Great American Downtown. We shot them out to everybody that say, I'm not comfortable. Or if you're vaccinated, please come in. If you're not, please put on a mask for my safety and yours. I think that's reasonable. I think if businesses are reasonable, of course, you're always going to get people that are on either side of the issue about masks versus no masks ever. I knew people during the pandemic that wouldn't put one on for anything. And I thought, well, I guess it's a free country, but that wasn't be my personal choice. But I think, I think most people are reasonable, and I think the people that complain, I think a business owner has to have a pretty darn good reason for masks. Maybe they have a compromise, maybe they're compromised, maybe they have a relative who's compromised. There's got to be a reason, because the rest of us, I think in launching these chamber events, we were initially going to have masks, and then when you sat at your table, but once the mayor dropped them, we did have signage that said just exactly what I said. If you're compromised or haven't been vaccinated, please wear your mask. You sit at the table. And, we had a table, instead of 10 people, we had 8 people. So we're still taking it seriously. I don't think we'll ever go back to the day where we can cram as many seats into a room and where you can't even back up because your neighbor's table's chair.
I'm not sure I agree with you. I think we will end up there. And I think we're going to end up there faster than you might think.
I probably won't want to do that. Unless we have the space. I
understand, but you know what? Watch the Bruins game. Is it tomorrow night? It's sold out. It's like 90% capacity at the Garden.
Yeah, the thing is, it's one thing if you're, when I used to fly, I fly because my husband's a pilot, but you have people coughing around you before the pandemic, and now you're like, no one dares fly, coughs on a plane. But
I think. So what we do in our office, and I think of our office as basically just like a business, like any other business. We have a lot of people coming and going, a lot of people from the public, is we have signage up that says, most of us are vaccinated here, and we're comfortable in our office not wearing masks. And if you're vaccinated, if you are fully vaccinated, we would ask that you do whatever you want. If you come in without a mask because you're comfortable, that's fine with us. If you come in with a mask on, we're going to ask you, would you prefer for us to wear a mask as well? And if you do, we all have them. We're going to pop them right on. I feel like that's a courtesy common thing.
And we take we take our cue from our visitors as well.
Right. And if you come in without a mask, I am going to ask you if you're vaccinated. And if you say you're not, we're going to say, well, we would prefer.
Here you go.
In the politest possible way, we would prefer if you do wear a mask, because I have staff members who have family members who are immune compromised, and we're just kind of not there yet. And we're not quite there yet.
We do have, if anybody out there needs more masks, we do have quite a few masks left over.
Both.
Yeah, well, if people feel, we're keeping them for our events in the event that, to be redundant, that something would crop back up. We just want to have them, but we also have enough to share if people would still like some. Because you're right, we have to take our cue. But, for me, as far as cramming people in a room, that COVID came out of nowhere. I mean, we were at planning meetings and going, not coming here. And then, the next week we're shut down. And I will not take, anything for granted.
I flew through Washington, Reagan a week before the shutdown, and it was basically just a whisper.
Yeah.
It was like, there's this thing in Washington State with 3 people who are sick, and it's over in China as well. And then we went from that to boom.
Right.
But I did want to ask you, because we don't have all that much time left, I did want to ask, what's next? What's the next big thing for the Chamber of Commerce here in Nashua?
Well, I think the next big thing is what we based our annual dinner on, which was last week, our Eminence Awards, and that's our business awards. And the theme was celebrating our diversity. And the chamber, the board, the staff, we're all very committed to diversifying and making the chamber more inclusive. I think a big piece of that is going to come from our younger membership, our YUGO, Young Professionals Group. Where we partner with a lot of organizations, with the city. The great thing is that the city itself is so welcoming, and the mayor's policy of welcoming all nationalities. I think this is the perfect city. As I said, we've got a head start on the rest of the state with our cities and our proximity to Boston.
So if you are a minority-owned business, or you are thinking about starting a minority-owned business,
please contact us.
Contact the chamber, because you probably have some resources and some connections. You can help out probably with access to capital, I'd imagine.
We probably can't do that, but we partner with the Small Business Development Center, which is an arm of the SBA, and they're also partners with the University of New Hampshire. Their cooperative division,
and connect people to things about regulations and rules and all the things.
And I'm not sure if people listening today are English is not your first language. I know it's difficult to try to apply for things when it's not your first language, and we can certainly get partners to help with that language barrier as well. If we learn one thing from the pandemic, chambers did a really great job of getting the information out and educating people. But where we fell down was, that was great if you were English speaking. If you were not English speaking, we fell down on that, and we're not going to let that happen again. And so really chambers across the state, as we've met, we've all realized that we were in such a hurry to get things back, get information out, that we missed a key part of our business population, and we're going to correct that.
And there are a lot of businesses in Nashua, I think of a number of hair salons, for example, that I know of that are minority owned. I know one barber who's from the Dominican, who spent years trying to save up as a barber to start his own business. And wouldn't it be great if the Chamber of Commerce could help to connect people so that that whole process can be accelerated?
We would love to do that.
Can kind of be the accelerant that makes the business process move forward more rapidly.
Right. Please give us a call.
Yeah, good.
Easy phone number, 603-881-8333, and
Do you
we would be happy to talk to you. I don't, but I should come up with one, a chamber jingle.
You should have a chamber jingle. We probably have somebody who can write one. Wendy, I really appreciate you coming on today and talking with us about the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce and all that you're doing in our community. It's really remarkable.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.